This is Chair Miller. I'd like to formally call this meeting to order. Welcome to city staff, transportation commissioners, and the public to the January 16th Transportation Commission meeting, the first meeting of 2025. I hope you all have had a great year, and we've got a great year ahead of this commission. Meetings are being held in person, televised on Cox Cable Channel 11, and streamed online on scottsdaleaz.gov for the public to listen and view the meeting in progress. I'd like to ask for a roll call to begin this evening's meeting.
Chair Miller.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wilcoxon.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Marmon.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Koftile.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Pankowitz.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Cardella.
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Davis. Absent. Thank you.
Thank you. Spoken comment is being accepted for agendized and non-agendized items. The request to speak forms must be submitted no later than 90 minutes before the start of this meeting. Do we have any spoken comments?
Chair Miller, members of the commission, we do not have any spoken comments.
Written comments are being accepted for agendized and non-agendized item and should be submitted electronically at least 90 minutes before the start of this meeting. These comments are also emailed to the Transportation Commission and posted online. Do we have any written comments?
Chair Miller, we also have no written comments this evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So that takes us to the first item on our agenda, which is the approval of the meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the meeting minutes? Any changes? Commissioner?
This is Commissioner Koftile. There was a couple that I saw on here. Under election of vice chair, the final part of the sentence says it was suggested she be named vice chair when referring to Commissioner Wilcoxon. That should be he. Suggested he be named vice chair. And then under adjournment, it says Commissioner Koftile. It should be spelled, so this is on the last page. It says Commissioner Koftile instead of Koftile. And so the U and the A should be switched on that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Koftile. We can make both of those changes.
Are there any other changes, comments on the minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to accept as amended.
Motion to accept as amended.
I second.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Koftile, seconded by Commissioner Marmon. Do we need a roll call vote? Yes, go for it, Kyle.
Chair Miller.
Approved.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wilcoxon.
Approved.
Thank you. Commissioner Marmon.
Approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Koftile.
Approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Pankowitz.
Yes.
Thank you. And Commissioner Cardella.
Yes.
Thank you. And just to note, Commissioner Davis may end up joining us online. So Commissioner Davis, if you do, please just make note and I will update the attendance record. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the approval of the annual Transportation Commission report. The annual report was in our packets. Is there any comments, additions, changes? Staff have any comments before we? Any comments from the commission? No? I do have one comment on here that I would suggest. You have under future significant work products for the commission, I would add the transportation safety plan, since that is something we're definitely going to be working on. Do you agree with that?
Chair Miller, we can add that absolutely. And Devin, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down, if you have anything additional you'd like to add in any of those categories, I can take note and add that in this evening, and then we would approve this as amended.
Commissioner Koftile?
I just wanted to add one other thing to report. Like we had the information about the all the improvements and things like that that have happened, I believe we had that right, for all the things. And one of the things, so we talked about our big projects, but the city does so many small projects. I feel like we should, if it's possible, find a way to highlight that. Like one of the ones I think about is on Thomas, on the Greenbelt. When it would rain, it would flood under there, and even when we didn't have a lot of rain, it still would flood under there. And then the city took about a week. They got some bulldozers in there, and they widened the flood the water that comes in. They widened the channel that the water goes through there, and it hasn't flooded since then for the extra water goes in. And I think we should highlight more than just the big projects that we've done, but those little things that take a week but make it so that my commute and everybody who uses that area in the morning, doesn't get splashed. Those type of things I think could be, if it's possible, to highlight them. I know the city does a lot of stuff, but that made my life a lot better. So,
Do you want some of those added here, or do you think that we should pay attention to that going forward so that next year those could be noted?
Going forward, I think that would be another thing that the city could really highlight the good work that it does in those little things as well.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Marmon, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Under the topics, the second to last one, the LILO presentation, I didn't think we voted on that. I thought it was just a presentation.
Likewise, the proposition 479 that was presented to us by Maricopa Association of Governments, it was just information as well.
Commissioner Pankowitz, Commissioner Marmon, and Chair Miller, we can go back and double check the record on all of those and make amendments if necessary.
Thank you. Is the commission comfortable with approving this with the amendments, or would you like this to come back once double checked? Is that good? Okay. If you could double check those, then we could take this up at the next meeting.
Absolutely. We will pause the vote. We'll make these amendments and we'll bring it back at our February meeting.
Great.
Thank you.
Chair Miller, I know Commissioner Kaufleil brought up some of the small projects. We can kind of include those in certain project updates during the year because I know those tend to get lost. And so we'll move those forward. And there are uncountable small little items, but it makes a big difference to a lot of the residents. So we'll include that for next year.
Wonderful, thank you so much. That takes us to number 3, which is the 2025 Transportation Commission meeting schedule. Last year, we decided to meet 9 months out of the year. So now we get to decide which 3 months we would like to take off.
Chair Miller and members of the commission, just for reference, up on the screen, you will see the updated bylaws. As you mentioned, last August, we made that decision to move from 12 annual meetings to 9. So this will be up for discussion, and whichever 3 months the commission decides to take off will be what we're voting on this evening. Thank you.
Before we start this discussion, I have a question and sort of like leads into another agenda item, but the transportation safety plan that you have set out over a period of time, is there a specific reason that you had those set for each of those months, or can we spread them out over the 9 months of the year?
Yeah, that's Chair Miller and Vice Chair Wilcoxon. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. So we're going to present our plan for how we see it rolling out. If you would like to see adjustments made to which months we come to, we can easily talk about and make adjustments to which months we come to. We'll have some explanations as to why we laid it out the way we did, and I hope for a robust conversation about where we're going with that.
Wonderful, thank you. I didn't know how flexible those dates were.
we want to be flexible at this meeting and get it set and then have a possible action from you guys to vote on it so we can move forward with that schedule for the upcoming year. I guess I'll bring it up in the meeting, but in the presentation, but yeah, there's one firm one, which would be the last one.
Okay, great. Commissioners, up for discussion as far as when you would like to meet. Commissioner Kofta?
I only have 2 months that I would nominate for us taking off, which would be July and November, would be the 2 that I would want. And then whatever the commission decides for the 3rd month, I wouldn't have any objection to. And also, if they don't want those months, that's fine with me too. Those are just my nominations.
Commissioner Marmon, do you have a preference?
I think unless something changes, we had a November meeting, and we canceled the October meeting last year. Is that, am I remembering that right?
I think we canceled the December meeting.
Commissioner
Okay, December,
Marmon,
and
Chair
then we had
Miller. Yeah, the December meeting and the July meeting historically have been the 2 months that have been canceled, so to speak. And last year they were actually taken off. And then, yes, the October meeting was an unofficial meeting, not on record, but a meeting at the Traffic Management Center.
I don't have an objection to maintaining that schedule.
Okay. Vice Chair Wilcoxon, preferences?
I'm fine with July and November, and then, not sure, Chairman Marmon, or Commissioner Marmon, what other month you were suggesting?
October, like we
October.
did last.
Okay. July, so it'd be July, October, and November. I'm fine with that.
And I think it worked out fairly well. We had that nice presentation at the Traffic Control Center that October, so I think that worked out very well. And maybe we can find something suitable again.
A field trip.
That's right.
Commissioner Pankowitz?
I wouldn't object to canceling anything around the holidays, like a November or December. However, if we do November and December, that may be too long of a time. And I'm really open, as long as we don't have months where we don't meet 2 months at a time.
Commissioner Cardella?
I much prefer July and December being the 2 months off, and then the third one being any month in the year that I would look to the staff to see what they think is most appropriate in terms of what business needs to be conducted, but similar to what Commissioner Pankowitz said, as long as it's not a consecutive month, that we have 2 meetings, 2 months in a row with no meeting.
Okay, so it looks like everybody thinks that July is good. We're all good. And then there's a discussion split between November, December, and potentially October. From a staff perspective, what do you think about taking 2 months off in a row?
I think that's a long time off for us, but we also understand it's holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that type of thing. So I think it would be up to the commission. We are good with any decision that's made, but usually we like to have them spread out a bit.
Okay.
I'll take my November nomination away. It sounds like everybody likes December better than November, so, yeah.
So,
And we meet early in November anyway, and Thanksgiving, or, right? Yeah, we'll meet earlier in the Thanksgiving's at the end of November, so, yeah.
so it sounds like July, October, December are the meetings too.
Yes.
Chair Miller, members of the commission, that is what I'm hearing. And just for reassurance, we have a little bit more of a buffer than we did this past year between our commission meeting date and Thanksgiving, the way the calendar falls. So if that's of any benefit.
Okay. Well, let us vote then on having meetings January, February, March, April, May, June, August, September, and November, and taking off July, October, and December. Thank you, thank you. I was very proud of myself, too. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll move that we meet every month except July, October, and December.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
And we will do a roll call vote for this as well. Chair Miller,
Approve.
thank you. Vice Chair Wilcoxon,
Approved.
thank you. Commissioner Merman,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Koftile,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Pankowitz,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Cardella,
Yes.
thank you. And Commissioner Davis, did I hear you join online?
Yes, you did, and I am a yes as well. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that takes us to election of officers. So this is your opportunity to tell me that you weren't impressed with my knowledge of all the months. Every January, the commission gets to elect the chair and the vice chair. So I will take nominations for those positions.
Chair Miller and members of the commission, again, just to reiterate, up for reference, you have the bylaws, the section for elections. I will point out that in order to meet this requirement, at least one of the either chair or vice chair needs to have 1 full year remaining of their term. In our current structure with you as chair and vice chair Wilcoxon, we would satisfy that requirement. Thank you.
Then I would like to nominate Chair Miller to continue in her role and Vice Chair Wilcoxon to continue in his role.
Thank you, Commissioner Koftile. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Pankowitz. And we'll take a vote on that.
Yes, Chair Miller,
Approved.
thank you, if you're so willing. Vice Chair Wilcoxon,
Approved.
thank you. Commissioner Merman,
Approve.
thank you. Commissioner Koftile,
Approve.
thank you. Commissioner Pankowitz,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Cardella,
Yes.
thank you. And Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
thank you.
Excuse me, that takes us to a much more interesting topic, which is the overview of the Strategic Transportation Safety Plan.
Yes, thank you, Chair Miller and commission members. We will be discussing our plan for the next year to roll out our Strategic Transportation Safety Plan. We may have been too optimistic about the success of the keyboard. Next slide, please. We've acquired some consultant services starting in the fall and been working with them for the past couple months to start developing our strategic safety plan. One of the key elements is that safety is a shared responsibility, something that will be highlighted in many of the aspects of the plan. The plan will guide safety improvements, programs, and strategies for all transportation modes, especially the most vulnerable users. So trying to highlight those aspects similar to most plans throughout the country, as well as through our state and regional agencies. How we rank, we see that in the data, Scottsdale is safer than a lot of the region. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a safety plan and improve and make ourselves safer as we go forward and make improvements through our network. Scottsdale, the Maricopa Association of Governments has ranked the top 100 intersections by crash risk. Scottsdale only has one of those 100, and that would be at Indian School in Hayden. And so we have one. We'll look at that as well as the rest of our network when we do this plan. Next slide, please. Current work that's going on with our consultant, T.Y. Lin, we've had a kickoff meeting starting in October, having constant meetings with them as well as key stakeholders, as well as Blue Zones, who are adopting their plan for the city on how to have a more livable community. They are a part of the conversation for our safety plan. We started the analysis, T.Y. Lin has started the analysis with the collision data that has a multimodal aspect to it, the safety studies, information, the network information, as well as other plans and studies to consolidate all of that together and give us some very good, useful information. We have started internally for a common practices assessment, looking at all peer cities and regional plans and components to highlight things that we can implement into our plan and feel that is successful, been done successfully, and we could emulate in ours. We're also finalizing our public participation plan with a technical advisory work group to look at walking audits as well as a virtual program to show people how it is to be vulnerable users in the network and give them a little bit of an insight and highlight into what it's like to be a pedestrian and a bicyclist in our network. Hopefully give some key insight into the certain features that those roadway users see on their daily lives and what could be improved upon. We're also developing the public meetings schedule as well as we are here today, developing our Transportation Commission schedule. So that's what we're working on now. Next slide, please. So our upcoming tentative timeline for meetings, we're looking at 8 meetings, one in February, March, April. The February and March one having 1 item each, so we will have additional items as well. And it's not going to be solely focused on the Strategic Safety Action Plan. We'll just have 1 item at each one of these meetings. April would be the densest one with 2 items, then June, August, September, and as we just discussed at the last item, we will move the October one to November most likely to accommodate the cancellation of that meeting. And then March meeting will be the final document approval if we can get through all the other 8 steps. Next slide, please. So the February 20th meeting was going to be item 1, the common practices and department successes. So when we laid out this plan to FHWA as well as to our consultant, we wanted to highlight what other people are doing successfully, but also what we're doing successfully. So looking at similar cities' practices, anything in their safety plans that we could look at and incorporate into ours. ADOT has developed 2 new plans, one for vulnerable users and one for the overall network itself. We're looking at that to be in line with our state partners as much as humanly possible so that we can coordinate on goals and strategies that would align with both them and us. And then most importantly, looking at what we've done in the past 20, 30 years that has made our roadways safer. We are safer than most of the region, and that's due to things that we've incorporated into the network. So what has been successful for us, and how can we continue that as well as add new things? It's not just about adding brand new things the whole way through, but highlighting the things that have been successful for us over the time. That would be what we are going to discuss on the February 20th meeting. Next slide. And I guess how this is set up, if we want to have questions after each one of these, or would you like me to go through each one of the meetings and then have questions at the end?
Any questions?
I can stop after each one and see if there's questions, and then we can go for a bigger question at the end. Okay. So,
Commissioner Cardella.
Thank you.
Can we go back one slide?
In terms of the similar cities, have those cities already been identified? And I'd be curious to know what they are.
We've identified some, and we're looking at possibly others, but we are definitely, that's going to be the key aspect to that meeting on February, is to show which cities we've looked at, which ones we've stolen from. And so no, we'll say what cities they're from. We're not going to just say, we will identify which cities they are.
Okay. And then what's the history on the City of Scottsdale and a traffic safety plan? Like, has there been one in the past? Is this the first time there's a comprehensive actual plan on paper? I'm not familiar with that.
Mostly we've done studies as in looking at our crash data, and then we've had our transportation master plans that have some safety components. This would be the first comprehensive safety plan that we have that would be documented in this kind of fashion.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions? This one, Commissioner Marmon?
Thank you. What is the one intersection that made the top 100 list?
Indian School in Hayden.
Okay. Who are the stakeholders you mentioned? Have you outlined any yet?
Chair Miller, Commissioner Marmon, we have some identified, we're still reaching out to people, but internally it would be people with police department, fire, the planning department, working with our standards, as well as people within transportation and traffic engineering. Externally, we are looking, since this is looking at more than engineering, it would include people that work with public health, potentially, as well as someone age-friendly and Americans with Disabilities Act type, I guess I would call it, in that field. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
And my last question is, just a request, if you could let us know when the public meetings are?
Absolutely. No,
Okay.
we will let commission know when we schedule those and invite commission to attend those. And these are public meetings too that we assess for this thing, but no, we will let the commission absolutely know when those meetings are happening.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kafta.
I just had one question about similar cities. Is that similar cities in the Phoenix metro region? Is that similar cities within Arizona? Is that similar cities within the U.S.?
Commissioner Koftal, yes, they are regional, national, and statewide. So we're looking at the list that our consultant gave us was mostly national, but we want to bring in some regional components to that as well.
Fantastic, thank you.
Do you have a question? Commissioner Backhouse.
I have a question, or I guess it's more of a request, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I know that MAG ranks its intersections by number of crashes, and I'm wondering if there is if there are intersections here in Scottsdale that have a higher number of pedestrian or bicycle crashes, even though they would be lower than the total crashes. And I guess my request is that we can look at vulnerable road users separately when topics are brought up to us, rather than having them conglomerated into the larger crashes, which involve people in vehicles that are usually more protected.
Yes, thank you for that comment. And the April meeting is going to be a wonderful time to talk about all of that. And so I'll take this note, but we are looking to identify not just based on crashes, but all different components as to what are our high-risk locations for safety. So that would be the April meeting is going to have. That's going to be all day for those topics.
Wonderful. So March.
April.
March.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Sorry.
Next slide, please. So March, we're going to talk about the initial goals and policy discussions. So trying to lay out the draft ideas of the components of the program, the plan, as well as the initial goals of each one of those. So just kind of the really skeleton framework of the plan is what I guess I see this as, showing those policies. We've highlighted some of the ones that we identified, once again, with FHWA as well as our consultant to focus on. We'll dig down deeper at these ones, and they have their own individual presentations coming up throughout the year, but an education component, public safety messaging, very key for this, how we can identify and address how we get the message out that we have shared responsibility in our network and we need to be safe, all of us, the users as well as the engineers, improving the infrastructure. Then an enforcement component, always a key aspect to how we can address the use of the roadways. The evaluation tools and monitoring progress. We want to, at the end of each one of these goals and policies, show a way of how we're progressing through the way. It's hard to have goals unless we're evaluating how we're doing on those goals. Well, workforce safety in the right-of-way, a key component for us. We have lots of wonderful employees working in the right-of-way, doing great work, doing potholing and restriping and resurfacing our roadways, doing ADA ramps. And we want to highlight and get down a little bit deeper into how we can keep them safe as they work in the roadway where cars are moving very fast. And they may not exactly have set up traffic control like a major roadway project, but one of those quick fixes we talked about early in the presentation, but they're out there to do it quickly. And how can they do it quickly and safely at the same time? So a part of the project, a part of the plan that we think needs to be highlighted. And then once again, building off of our program successes. So highlighted and interwoven into all of these components is a little bit of what have we done to get us to where we are now? We're not starting from scratch. We've been doing this for a while, so what have we done that's been successful and how can we build off of that? Our overall goal would be to reduce the likelihood of crashes resulting in fatal and serious injuries. This is a goal throughout the country, state, regionally, nationally, local governments. Those fatal and serious crashes are the key element that needs to go down. We need to make sure that people get home safely. So this is the overarching goal. Any questions on that one?
Any questions? Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chairman Miller and Vice and Nathan. Good presentation so far. I just do want to point out, though, that stop sign causes me pain every time I see it. It should be 8-sided, but apart from that, I guess I would recommend that rather than an enforcement component, it would be a first responder component because there are and may be more room for improvements, not only with enforcement, but with EMS services and fire as well. And then the final question is, and this always gets a little dicey when you're talking about a document that's developed by the city, is will there be any consideration of political considerations or recommendations? These are the current ordinances. We would recommend changes to X. And I would understand why there wouldn't be, but I'm just wondering if that has been something that's been discussed.
We have not discussed that yet. I think that's something we could talk about in here as we go through the items. I think that's not unreasonable for this commission to voice opinions about policies or ordinances that we have, and we'll see what recommendations the commission has for those. So I think this is an excellent venue to talk about those. And thank you for the comment of the stop sign. I know you've made it before to us. I will make sure tomorrow morning that we change this graphic. We keep putting the graphic in and forgetting about the 8 sides.
You just need 2 more sides. That's all you need.
We will adjust it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other? Commissioner Marmon?
Thank you. I think we should add pedestrian and traffic safety in work zones to that list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Cardella?
Thank you, Chair Miller. For any of these goals, what is the time horizon in terms of, we're going to bring down accidents by X% over what time horizon?
I think that's a good comment to make, and we'll make sure that we incorporate in the metrics how long we think we would, what is the benchmarks we would be setting for how to accomplish these goals? What are the parameters that we're using to evaluate how we're doing on it? So I think in March, that's a very important thing that we need to incorporate into when we lay out the goals.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we're ready for April.
Next slide, please. All right, so April, our consultant will have their data analysis and high-risk locations identified. So they will be presenting on our crash data analysis, identifying intersection segments and corridors which exhibit possible safety issues, and then identifying the high injury network, including multimodal components to that. So a long and very geographical discussion about our risks and the data that we currently have. Then the next item after that would be the strategies and countermeasures for the identification. So March, we're talking about goals, policies, and how we can achieve those goals. And then the item 4 here would be those strategies that we can do to improve on those goals. So looking at the data and then how could we improve on those. Very brief here, but this is going to be a very long discussion in April. Any questions
or
about that?
comments on this? Commissioner Marmon?
Thank you. And I might be late on this, back to February, but, looking at this picture, Scottsdale's a sliver in the metropolitan area. I mean, are we integrating with Phoenix, DOT, and everybody else so it works smoothly across borders?
We have not approached that, but that's not a bad idea, so we can reach out and see if they want to incorporate some ideas into our plan, or if there's something how we can collaborate, especially on the borders. So we can always reach out to our partners and see if there's ways
Okay, thank
we
you.
can work together on that safety issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Cardona?
Thank you, Chair Miller. On the data analysis, I think it would be interesting to have some demographic data of the city as well. We have an older population, and especially with, even in 10 years, I think we could see a lot of transportation changing as people can no longer drive, and I just think that certain areas of the city could maybe see shifts based on our population. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. That's a good comment. We will make sure to bring in some demographic data. All right. Next slide, please. All right, May 15th. Now we're getting into the three next ones being very specific interest areas. So the first one being an educational component, talking about our safety messaging. Safety is a shared responsibility, so how can we, and how are we going to address safety messaging, possible digital messaging signs, coordination with other departments like police and fire. Safe routes is a potential. Are we going to identify any kind of corridors that we want to see and highlight in messaging as needing to be safe routes? And then do we want to start up a safe routes to school program or something of that component? So talking about those two components as well as our overall safety messaging through the city.
Questions, comments? Commissioner Koftal?
Your last point there on safe routes to schools, this might be better for the actual meeting, but in the circles I run in, it seems like a national movement for something called a bike bus, and that might be something that the city could do to try and incorporate that, or at least sponsor it maybe like once a month or once a week or something like that to try and help doing that, if you're aware of what bike buses are. It seems like those are things that the community gets really involved in. I know Tempe has a bike bus thing that they do. So,
I have heard of a bike bus. I can pass it over to our certified expert on safe routes to school if she has any comments on safe routes to school.
I thank you, Chair Miller, Commissioner Koftal. The Broadmoor Bobcats bike school bus, or it's the bike bus. That's been great. It sounds like they serve as a really good model for us to look at. I just haven't made it there one of those mornings to see it in person, but I've been following it online and some of the ones in other cities. Thanks.
Commissioner Penquit?
I know that there are a lot of advocacy groups that participate in October in something that's called a week without a vehicle, where they invite elected officials and also traffic engineers and people in the transportation department or their cities to forego their vehicles for a week, and then come together again to talk about the experience of trying to get places, trying to do your everyday life without a vehicle, and what that means in terms of obviously the time that we spend and the time we save in vehicles, but also our sense of safety and the possibilities that we can see for improvements. And I would really love to invite all of our elected officials to participate in this, because there's a lot that can be gleaned in terms of how we do business. Sometimes we just don't know because we have the privilege of having a vehicle.
Well, Thank you, Commissioner. That's a good point, and I think that's a component to our walk audits to try and give people that insight, and we can definitely incorporate more into allowing as many people who are willing to participate to see from the other lens, see from the other side, and see the perspective of people using the network differently, and then maybe that can raise some awareness as to the different aspects of safety in our network. We look from the lens of how we use the network. We broaden our horizons. Maybe that can illuminate some new interest in safety in a different component that you may not necessarily use. So we'll try and incorporate as much of trying to look at it from a different side. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, it takes us to June.
June, workforce safety. So as I talked about in the previous slide, a key component for us to make sure that our employees, our staff, our street ops guys are safe as they do the necessary work right on the roadway. I highlighted 2 pole replacements in the slide, showing them working in the right of way, doing good and hard work to get our lights working back up. So this, as well as potholing, how can we make sure the right of way is safe and make sure our staff is as safe as possible.
As a for instance, we have pothole crews that go out and do potholes within the street system, and we're ensuring that we have a flasher truck in back of them, which is kind of one of the precautions we've instituted. And so those types of things, and we're hoping that the plan and the feedback and all will bring other things out that we need to do to ensure safety in the right of way. There's a lot of speeds, large vehicles that could do a lot of damage, and if you all remember, a number of years ago when a police officer was killed on McDowell Road behind a barrier. So I think, and we've had instances where staff have been hurt over the years too. So we're trying to do whatever we can to ensure their safety in the right of way as well as those driving.
As we just talked about, looking at it from another lens, this is another lens of those crews. I know we've all gone through construction sites, and many of us find the congestion that happens during construction frustrating. But if we could look at it from the workers' perspective and keeping them safe, if this plan can highlight that, maybe there's some shared responsibility in keeping the street ops guys safe as well, while we identify ways to keep that done as well.
Great. Questions, comments? Commissioner Cardella.
Thank you. I think in this case too, any information about, histories of injuries or any data on that would be very powerful. And then I wonder too if there's any information on just the property damage that could happen of people, running over the barriers and such that, that's a cost to a city as well. Thank you.
I did see a flattened barricade over on Chaparral yesterday, so that's a good point to highlight.
Commissioner Kofta.
I just want to reiterate Commissioner Marmon's point about pedestrian safety around work zones. I know sometimes it seems like it just seems like sometimes it's not taken into consideration, or at least it makes the pedestrians have to make unsafe crossings to be able to continue on their path. And so I just wanted to reiterate, because I thought that was a really great point that he made.
No, thank you for that. And that also brings up a comment of development, and when development comes in to do construction, I would say we try to do our best to accommodate pedestrians. Development comes in and they have to work in a different area than we work, and that may impact the sidewalks more than we do. So a way we could look to possibly address how development comes in and barricades off sidewalks to make sure that emphasize keeping the sidewalks open or keeping a safe route for pedestrians to use could be very useful in this plan, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've skipped July and are going into August.
All right, so August, enforcement and emergency response. So this would be highlighting police involvement, speeding prevention, with the elements that happened in New Orleans just recently, possibly looking at any way we could highlight terrorism prevention in some way, as well as then emergency response, as Vice Chair Wilcoxon brought up. And I think we will take a page out of ADOT's book on that one, as they gave a great presentation on their plan and what they did with emergency response. We can look to them and put that same element in. So 4 elements to try and work towards a safer network and the use of the network itself.
Questions, comments? Commissioner?
I'm almost wondering if when we work with police, I mean, we've been hearing now, workforce safety, safe routes to school, if there is an opportunity to do targeted enforcements and even like invite the media to participate, to make it more of an educational thing. I mean, drivers don't even have to get ticketed, but they can get educated on like stopping for a pedestrian hybrid beacon, or school zones and speeding on school zones, or workforce safety, what happens in a zone where people are working. And with all these topics that I'm seeing, I'm almost seeing like an opportunity to bridge the education piece with the enforcement piece, and maybe invite the media and have something that can really educate residents on how to move about some of these areas that sometimes are confusing or frustrating for drivers.
No, thank you. That's a great comment.
Commissioner Kofta?
One thing I would want, I mean, I don't know if it would fit in here, but in the past month, I've had 2 cyclists tell me that their interactions with police have resulted in the police not ticketing them, but giving them incorrect information about what the rules are, about what you can and can't do, like, for example, at a stoplight. If the stoplight's not picking you up and there's no other car traffic, what the cyclist can and can't do, and police have given them incorrect information about what is allowed and what's not allowed, and movement, direction of movement, and that type of thing. So if we are going to talk about enforcement, emergency responders, there might be some room for, in that, our police to make sure that they understand what the rules are in Scottsdale and the state of Arizona.
Maybe that could fall under interdepartmental coordination, and we can have some presentations that we all very nicely talk about the rules and approach them. So I think either in the enforcement or the education, we can talk about making sure all staff members also can be as informed as possible.
Thank you.
Anything else? So the next presentation that you had skipped a month. Is that something that you need so that this then would move to November, or will you move this to September?
I would say, next slide, please. I would say we move it to November, because as the next slides come up, what we have is, we have the next 2 meetings right here. We have the first draft, so that would be compiling all of the conversations we've had, all the action items that we've had, and putting it into a first draft, and then presenting all of these elements in one comprehensive draft for the first time. So showing each element all the way through, and then October, now I would say November being the first look at the whole comprehensive draft. So I would hope and would see this as us getting to you guys sooner than a week before, so you guys could truly digest the plan, and we could have a robust conversation of the first draft, any final edits to the draft itself, and then showing the new components of individual project prioritization if we are developing specific projects out of this plan, as well as showing the evaluation tools and how we can do that. So I would say moving it back a month rather than moving it forward would give us the opportunity to complete it and give you guys more time to review it.
Thank you.
And then the March one is the end of our contract with TY Lin and the final document and approval of the plan. So we'd come back after we've looked at the first draft, taken comments back in, revised, we'd come back for the final draft and the approval of the final draft to move on up the chain to City Council.
Any questions, comments? Vice Chair Wilcoxon?
Thank you, Chairman Miller, and thank you again, Nathan. I just had, I guess it's all one question, but I know that at ADOT, when we developed our strategic safety plan, it was, we didn't put a lot of emphasis on implementation initially. And we've changed that this time around, but we now actually have more work in the implementation phase of it after the plan is written than writing the plan itself. And that was with the intent of keeping the plan a living document and making sure that as priorities changed, the plan could change as well, but also more touch points with the public. What are the plans for, and it may be dictated by this, by the actual writing of it, what are the plans for implementation after it's written?
That would be, I think, strongly based on the goals we have, but the April meeting of the what we identify in our high-risk locations, as well as our strategies and our safety measures to put in. And I guess how I'm saying that is, after that, when we have identified how we can approach certain safety components, then we can look at certain corridors and maybe identify corridors. This would be also in collaboration with the implementation program, implementation section we have in the Transportation Action Plan, looking back at that's been approved, and the long list of projects we've identified in that, and seeing if any of those rise higher to the top because of this newfound information we have from the safety plan. So we have a pretty robust implementation section in the Transportation Action Plan already. If this plan identifies some of those as being more important because of a safety element, then we may rise those higher to the top, if that's answering your question.
I think it is answering the question, but thank you.
Some of the larger features, like bringing back the digital messaging signs, a lot of those types of things are based on budget. But as Nathan said, there are other items that we could include in projects, that we could include in our departments as measures for safety. But some of those larger infrastructure type things and other measures that require a decent amount of funding will have to go through the budget process. And so that would be part of the implementation process.
Thank you, Director Melenchenko. I guess I understand that part. I was more interested really in the public touch points with these plans once they're developed. Will the public be involved in the implementation in any way? Or is this something that is being taken over by or taken on by staff? And I guess I would just urge, if at all possible, to keep this in the public domain for lots of reasons, but probably chief among them, the reason that you pointed out initially, which is safety is a shared responsibility, and the more people who are involved in implementing this, the better. There wasn't a comment. I mean, that was just more of a comment than anything.
No, thank you, and I think we will definitely try and accomplish that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other comments? You know, I've been remiss in calling on Commissioner Davis, because I know what it's like when you're just calling in from the Ethernet. Commissioner Davis, do you have any questions on anything you've heard so far?
Chair Miller, no, I'm fine, and thank you for reaching out.
Nathan, public outreach.
Next slide, please. So public outreach, so our public participation plan, we're including 2 public meetings. As Commissioner Mormon asked, and we do agree, we will set those and get the word out that those public meetings are happening. We are conducting pop-up virtual reality experiences showing video clips of bicycle riders' perspective. We have conducted one of those at Canal Convergence. I can have Susan talk more to that and how that went. And then we are conducting other pop-up opportunities as we go on at the Old Town Farmers Market, possible spring training games, and the Tour de Scottsdale Expo, where we had a booth last year. I believe we intend to have a booth this year, and it's a great opportunity to show what that is like.
Thank you. Chair Miller, members of the commission, the consultants showed us how and walked us through how they conduct a virtual reality biking experience so that we could do the same. And Greg Davies and I, as well as Stephanie Crooker from Traffic Engineering, helped out. You basically spend about 2 minutes on a stationary bike wearing a virtual reality headset, and they show 30-second clips of different bikeways in Scottsdale. Some of the time you guess where you are, but you actually can look around and see whatever the bike rider was seeing from the equipment that recorded that route. And it's interesting to see the riders' questionnaire answers before they ride and then after. And we got a really good variety of people who stopped by. I think we had about 40 people, 45, different ages. Some ride bikes, some don't. There were some kids that are already excited about virtual reality. So we got great insight, and I think in future opportunities to do this, it gives us the chance also to reach someone who maybe doesn't ride a bike, but they want to know what that looks like. And then there were even some common things people said, if it was a standard bike lane versus riding on the path. So it was a nice first public component for the plan.
So additionally, we're conducting walking audits at key locations in the city and showing the perspective for pedestrians, and then finally a trolley audit to give vehicular users perspectives of trolley use as well. So trying to give that different perspectives. And then we are having a plan website coming that will include the public outreach updates and any information that we can get out to the public so that we have as much participation as possible.
If I can also suggest considering an online public meeting, I know that on some of the programs that the city has had before, not for transportation, but they'll have like a meeting in South Scottsdale in the middle of the day and then a meeting right after work in North Scottsdale. So unless you work right by that meeting in North Scottsdale, you can't make either of them, so.
I mean, for the Transportation Action Plan, we recorded ourselves giving these kind of presentations and put them up on the website for that kind of activity. That wasn't too time consuming for staff. I think that's a element we can put together again so that there's a ongoing ability to review the material and possibly provide comments. So I think that's something we can incorporate again.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Kofta.
So first, just kind of a joke comment, which would be for the virtual rides. Have you gotten like a wind machine or anything like that you could use, or like a spray bottle that you could spray on people while they're using it? And
I can go buy a fan.
Huh?
I can go buy a fan.
Okay. But the more serious comment that I have is for the 3D video, right? Like unfortunately, I had to leave town, and so I wasn't able to go to Canal Convergence myself. And I think on YouTube you can do like 3D videos and stuff like that. And so, like we were just like Basically, if there'd be more opportunities so that people don't have to go to these events to be able to experience that, because there's 3D headsets are cheaper and easier than ever to get these days. And so if we had a way to make it so people could experience that outside of these meetings, I think that would be helpful also to our citizens.
Thank you. We can definitely look into that.
Commissioner Marmon?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just concerned that I didn't see the word bicycle anywhere in your presentation, and pedestrians aren't mentioned, and it looks like we're missing a big part of this, that it's not even mentioned in your safety plan.
There will definitely be mention of them as we come up through the sections. Sorry if we didn't highlight that in here, but as we talk about in April and in March in the goals, multimodal and the vulnerable users will be certainly highlighted as we go through the plan. I reassure you. If you, I guess, to add to your comment, would you be looking for specific sections that are bike and pedestrian focused? Would that
Well,
make?
In the past, because I'm just starting my second year, we've spent considerable discussion on bike paths and bicycles and pedestrians and paths, and it's not mentioned.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be emphasized more.
Thank you. No, we'll make sure to emphasize it more as we come up into the next couple of meetings. Thank you. No,
Thank you.
I promise.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pankowitz?
Yes, to Commissioner Marmon's point, I appreciate people doing a virtual reality experience of what it is to ride a bike. I know for me, riding a bike in Scottsdale, it's a lot scarier than, putting on goggles and pretending. Not that I want to scare people, but I think if you were to ask any parent of like a 10-year-old if they feel comfortable having their kid ride on X street, they would tell you that they're probably not. And I'm wondering what are the opportunities to maybe work with schools, with kids, or even with the bicycling community on the areas where their perception or safety, or where we actually see a lot of crashes that are happening, so that part of an audit can be a real audit on a bike. And likewise, for your walking audits, I've heard different city departments that have purchased, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but like wheelchairs, and sometimes they blindfold one of the staff members, so that part of that audit is also done from the perspective of someone who has disabilities. That's not to say we couldn't invite someone from the community of folks that have disabilities to maybe join us. And likewise, in previous roles and positions I've held, one of the biggest complaints I hear is from mothers that can't really push a stroller because there are certain impediments. So I was wondering if that could be a part of those walking audits so that they're more inclusive to the user experience. We know that the people that can't drive a vehicle may have some sort of disability, and they're the ones that are most likely to be using the streets or the public transportation, and I think it's important to get that perspective as well.
Oh, thank you.
Commissioner Cardella?
Thank you. It's so hard to get a broad array of public input. It's, people typically come forward with their input versus that's a sliver of the population. I know when you did the trolley feedback, you did a great job of getting onto the trolley and handing out surveys to everyone who came on so that you really were surveying a broad array of people. So anything that you can do to reach out to, I love the Bike Expo, you'll get the biker community there, but even at parks, major intersections where you see people pedestrians that are, coming from different bus routes, that there's certainly areas in the city that have a lot of foot traffic on a regular basis. So if there's anything you can do to just proactively reach out to people so that we're making sure that we hear from everyone.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Davis, do you have any comments?
Commissioner Miller, I'm fine, thank you.
I'm sorry, did you say you had a question, or no? Okay,
No questions from me, thank you.
okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't catch that. Commissioner Koftal, you had, no? Okay. So this is for discussion and possible action. I assume that what you are looking for from us is to approve the schedule?
Approve the schedule, see if you would like to add any meetings, adjust any of the meetings. If you're agreeing with the schedule, then yes, approve the schedule.
Commissioner Cardella?
Thank you. So when you come back to us with that final plan in November, and then we're meant in March to vote whether to approve it, is there in January or February an opportunity to discuss it again? If there's, takeaways from the November meeting and significant or substantial changes that would require continued discussion?
That time frame between the first draft and the final draft, if, depending on how November goes, if there's a need for a second draft, we have room for a second draft. So I would say, depending on how the November goes, if we need to bring it back to you and have another round of reviews, we have the time to do that, so we can easily do that.
And is that something we have to include in this vote for the opportunity to have that, or
I would say, no, we don't need to. In November, we can have this conversation, and if incorporating, if there's an extensive amount of comments and we want to have another presentation, we can have that discussion at that time, and we'll be happy to come back at any of the meetings between then and November.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Pankowitz?
So in this vote, would we want to include like a broadening of a scope to include children, elderly, pedestrians, people with disabilities, like we've been mentioning through the slides that you've given us? Or is this something that you're just taking into consideration right now and we're just more doing the schedule?
I would say we're taking into consideration now. It's good notes to have. Each one of these are going to be action items. So as we go through each one of the ones coming up, that's when we will add content and vote on the content. So those notes will be incorporated. And if you feel we need to expand on something, that would be part of the comments and the votes as we go through each one of the sections.
Thank you. Commissioner Koftal?
Can you go back to the items, the calendar? Or just, the question I really have is, we have, with the times that we are taking off and your proposed schedule, the only thing you have to rechange is October's meeting, right? We're moving October to November. Everything else, we're going to be in session for. Okay.
Everything else, we assumed July and December were going to be off, so.
Okay.
So we already incorporated that into the draft.
All right. I just wanted to double check we weren't missing anything.
Yep.
Or that was going to be the only real change to the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Marmon?
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Cardella that we need to have some flexibility in here because, I envision another meeting in here somewhere just because it's going to be a wonderful report and it's going to be big and comprehensive and it's just going to take time. So if we're going to make a motion, I would move that the including the October meeting is going to be in November, that there will be flexibility in there for the staff to call for an additional meeting if we needed to address all the comments.
Certainly seems reasonable. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve of the upcoming timeline with the understanding as we move forward that additional meetings may be necessary. that, we'll take a vote.
We'll do a roll call here, and Chair Miller,
Approved.
thank you. Commissioner Cardella,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Koftile,
Approved.
thank you. Commissioner Marmon,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Pankowitz,
Yes.
thank you. And Vice Chair Wilcoxon,
Approved.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Domi, for that in-depth conversation about the upcoming year for the
Yep.
commission.
Lots of action items. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next, we have Director Melnicheko to talk about our overview and accomplishments.
I think this kind of runs hand in hand with what we talked about before, the small little items that we've completed and the large items. But I'd like to start it off, if you go to the next slide, is we have a series of these types of documents, pages that were put together by Christina Lenko and the graphic designer at the city to, what we wanted to do is provide.
Director, I'm sorry. Can you move the microphone closer?
Absolutely. Since we have new council, city manager, et cetera, and mayor, as well as even a new commission member, we're providing creating these documents that provide an overview of the department. And as we see here, we have the sections, the amount of staff, as well as the annual timeline of the maintenance cycles and things that the city works on. Many of them are somewhat behind the scenes in the alleys, the drainage areas, but it also includes transit service, patch crew, all these types of things. So I think what we wanted to do was really encapsulate this and show the amount of work that's being done on a yearly basis. But this was one of the pages that really provides an overview of all of our sections: traffic engineering, planning, transit, street operations, and pavement preservation. Next. And then the Transportation Action Plan. One of the items that will probably be coming to you in the near future is where we are with the plan. We have a dashboard that we've created. These are some of the milestones that we have undertaken thus far. But this is information that we passed on, how it relates to our Transportation Action Plan, everything from street, pedestrian, trail, transit, and bicycle, and where we are with our target areas. In addition, one of the important things that's always talked about is where our funding comes from. And the breakdown that's outlined on the bottom: local funds 41%, federal 26%, and regional 33%. So it's a pretty good, almost an even mix of the funding that we receive. So it's very important for our staff, which does a great job at kind of keeping all stones unturned for funding and grant opportunities, whether it's federal or regional, safety improvements, et cetera. But so that provides, that's our investment mix. Next, please. And then community engagement. As you know, we have an overview of the commission, Paths and Trails Subcommittee, and then the outreach efforts that some were talked about in the previous presentation on the Safety Action Plan. But one of the important things is, and we continue to tell the public, is the best way to reach us is through the EZ system. And if you can see down on the bottom, last year we had 4,250 EZ requests come into the department. Everything from construction and barricading to streetlights, traffic signals, alleys, sidewalks, traffic engineering, and transportation services. So that is really one of the strong ways for us to understand what the community needs are. So this is another page of the summary of an overview of our department. Next. And then also, we'll be talking about some of the projects, but this is a circle of life of one of the projects, and this is Pima Road improvements, Pinnacle Peak to Happy Valley, and what goes through from planning, construction and design and maintenance, and what are the various steps that we go through. In addition, we also make it known that all of these projects are included in council-approved plans, which are boxed down on the corner. Most recent, our Transportation Action Plan in 22, but also it corresponds very closely with the city's general plan, and then our previous master plans from 16 and 08. Next. Next page. And then some of our successes. We've completed a number of projects and studies, and here's a list of some of the milestones that we've hit. 5 projects completed, 2.14 lanes of buffered bike lanes, new sidewalks, shared use path, 0.14 miles, trails 2 miles, and then we've completed 3 active transportation studies within the city. Next. Completed projects. As you know, we had 2 large, or actually 3 large-scale projects in the north portion of the city. Pinnacle Peak to Happy Valley Road on Pima, and then Happy Valley from Pima to Alma School, and then the new Miller Road Bridge, Pinnacle Peak to Happy Valley, and we'll touch on each one of these projects, as well as an Old Town safety improvements for Goldwater Highland, and that occurred between Chaparral and Camelback, and then historic Old Town streetlights. We've finished implementing 90 new streetlights within the historic portion of Old Town, and so those are some large-scale projects accomplished this past year. Next. So Pinnacle Peak, Happy Valley, and Happy Valley Pima Road to Alma School. We went from 4 lanes to 6, added sidewalks, new bike lanes, and shared use paths. So they really coordinated very well with our Complete Streets effort on these streets by including all of these elements. Next. And then the Hayden Miller Road Bridge. This is a new bridge, 4 travel lanes, protected sidewalks, and buffered bike lanes. But what was really key to this is up north we have 2 primary north-south corridors, Pima and Scottsdale Road. This is another step of creating and expanding another north-south route, and that'll go now from Happy Valley south. At this point in time, it can't, there's state land to the north on Happy Valley, so in the future, as development continues, the roadway will go north, but I think this provides another option, and it will also help with continuing construction activity on Scottsdale Road and Pima to provide another alternative route in that area. Very successful project. And here are some photos of some of what has been completed. Next. And then the Goldwater Highland safety improvements, as we talked about, this is along Scottsdale Road, and it goes the Goldwater Boulevard section from Chaparral to Camelback Road. We provided intersection improvements at Highland, new striping, paving, and then a pedestrian crossing from Optima to make those connections over to the hotel as well as Fashion Square. And then there were other safety improvements completed on Goldwater, but we work very closely, on Goldwater, but we work very closely with coordinating with all of the area stakeholders, whether it was Fashion Square or Optima, and then the other housing that's along the corridor. Worked very closely with them, and letters were sent to council to move that ahead. Next. And then keeping the historic Old Town character, we completed the final phase of all the historic streetlight installation in this portion, the Old Town portion highlighted on the graphic. About 90 lights were installed, and they are LED, much more efficient, safe, and then they were also able to withstand the load of putting the additional festoon lights that are along all the streets. Next. And then now we'll go into some street improvements, repaving and restriping. We've had these three corridors, Jackrabbit Road, 104th Street, and then Royal Palm, where we have repaved and restriped these corridors and added buffered bike lanes. And what we've talked about previously is we work amongst the division paving, traffic engineering, and planning very closely on implementing these types of improvements to make sure that if there's a paving project coming, we look at the the existing striping on that street to see if improvements could be made. So those three divisions work very closely on these improvements, and we also work with the community when we put the plans together and move forward with the bike elements. And we also make it known to the community that the buffered bike lanes, you can go to the next slide. These are photos of these projects. We also make it known in our correspondence that the buffered bike lanes also add more protection for the pedestrians as well as the cyclists. And in these projects, we also look at narrowing the roads to our 11-foot travel lanes, and so to modify them to our current standards, as well as adding buffered lanes. Next, please. And then bikeway studies and improvements. We have the Choya Road and the Glen Rosa neighborhood bikeway studies. Those have been completed, as well as the Chaparral Underpass improvements that have been brought to the commission many times. That was a neighborhood request for improvements, and that will be on some of the next slides. First, bikeway improvements, Choya Road, as well as the Chaparral Underpass that is near completion, I think. Within days.
It's being finalized as we speak.
And that is a very important safety project, pedestrian and bicycle underpass. What really made that project move faster is during the summer months we closed Chaparral Road between Hayden and for the project. I think that helped save a number of months of work on that project, but that's very successful. What we tried to do was eliminate the consistent conflicts of pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles when crossing out that intersection. I think we've all dealt with that movement. So very successful projects, as well as the Choya Road bike facility. Next, please. Then trail improvements and rehabilitations. Greg Davies is doing a great job in managing that section. We have Pinnacle Peak Road, 94th Street and Bahia Drive and Desert Foothills. Most of these are in the north portion of the city where the trails act many times as sidewalks for those communities. And it's, I think we brought the Desert Foothills to the commission in December. And so those are all very successful trail improvements and rehabilitation projects that we move forward. Next. Here's a map of some of those, the project location, as well as some illustrations, photos of the improvements that have been done on those rehabbed trails in that portion of the city. Next. Pedestrian improvements, we have a sidewalk gap that's been completed at Villa Monterey, as well as a Jackrabbit Miller pedestrian crossing. And there'll be, that has been brought to the commission numerous times. Next slide, please. This is the project area for those improvements. You can kind of see the black circle there. That is at the curve, there's a connection to the Arizona Canal. And the community came to us and said that is really kind of an unsafe area. Visibility is poor, and for those crossing to go from the neighborhood over to the canal. So we did a study, and we've placed improvements and completed that. Rapid flashing beacons on either side of the curve, as well as signage. And then we've restriped the corridor also to add bike lanes and buffering in some portions of that section. It also is a connecting point between Chaparral to the east, as well as the Arizona Canal path to the west. Next. Here's some photos of the improvements, very successful. Community has been very happy with what we have implemented. And what we're going to be doing next, we're taking traffic counts to see if this corridor could be the first one where we would do a pilot project for bicycle protection. And so we'd be bringing that to the commission when we get to that point. But I think that being the connecting point, as previously shown, between the park and the canal path, I think it could lend itself to a pilot project like that, but we would bring those types of recommendations to the commission. Next. And then completed studies that have been led by our transportation planning staff with the consultant teams. 100th Street, and that's Frank Lloyd Wright to Frank Lloyd Wright. That's not a misprint there. And then 64th Street, both at Thomas and Indian School. Next. Here's 100th Street, and you can see on the map Frank Lloyd Wright curves, and it goes from Frank Lloyd Wright to Frank Lloyd Wright. This is a very interesting corridor. It was on one of our lists for reclassification. It's a 4-lane roadway we have bicycle facilities on it already. So what we looked at was outside of that corridor, how do we connect to the adjacent CAP canal, as well as sidewalk improvements and a pedestrian crossing. So those were what we had what we have recommended for this corridor for improvements. Next. And then 64th and Thomas and Indian School, we had all of these that went through a few public meetings where we also gathered input on what the citizens really experience on a daily basis in those corridors. And so the intersection improvements that we are looking to move forward in the future are pedestrian and bike movement to the shared use path, pedestrian and bicycle safety, as well as slower traffic speeds at the intersections. So those are the recommendations that we're moving forward. Next. And then this will be the third year, straight year, that we will be having the spring training trolley service. And each year it seems as though we are making the trolley route simpler and more straightforward. From where we're trying to connect the primary, the main 3 city parking garages with the stadium. and not to really diagonal and zigzag throughout Old Town, because we've had very little success picking others up along that corridor because it's such a pleasant walk. So we're realigning that and making sure that all that is coordinated. But we've had slow growth of that over the years, and we're hoping that this year we could have where people park and then they take this service, and then maybe even have a drop and stop going back if people want to eat afterwards and partake in the restaurants. So we're working very close with Dunn Transportation, our staff, as well as tourism, and then coordinating with Giants, the Giants organization, et cetera, on this service. Next. This past year, this is kind of an example of one of the types of cycles that we go through for staff. This was the damage that was done at McCormick Ranch this past year, windstorm. And so our staff works very closely with PD and parks to make sure that this debris is cleared out and roads are usable for the residents. And this, in previous years, there's been far more storms to deal with, but this is the type of activity that our street operations staffs deal with. Next. And then the continuing maintenance cycles, whether it's the alleys, paving, signals, drainage improvements, and even dust palliative in the north portion of the city. These all continue with our staff all year round. Next. And then what we continue to try to do is balance all of these projects, whether they're maintenance or maintenance paving or even new construction projects. And now we have construction on the freeway as well as special events corridors. We try to minimize the direction or the disruption and balance these projects throughout our network. And then we also, as you said, need to deal with event season, the building moratorium, extreme heat, and freeway construction. So we try to minimize the disruption on all of our residents and traveling public. Next. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. Very successful year.
Thank you so much. You did a lot, have a lot to be proud of. Commissioner Cardella.
Thank you, Chair Miller. I just wanted to comment on those first 4 slides. Those were very well done, and I really enjoyed looking through them. That gave the overview of transportation, so thank you.
I agree. Questions, comments? Commissioner Kafta.
So just going in order, number one, great presentation. Thank you for that. It's always great to see what the city's been up to. I think one of the things, I think I brought this up before, road closures. I'd like, because of how fast the road closure managed to speed up that Chaparral project, I would like the city to keep that in mind. I remember when we first had, this isn't under the city, but we had a presentation on it, the work that's being done on the 101, and how it's going to take 2 years or something. It's going to take a very long time because of all the restrictions, how they're trying to not interrupt anything and just try and be as minimal as they can. One of my coworkers goes through that construction constantly. You know, that's his commute. And before it started, I asked him, hey, would you rather they just shut it down and get it done quickly, or would you rather that they just sort of do what they plan to do? And he said, oh, no, yeah, definitely. I wanted to try and be as least as intrusive as he can. About a month later, unbidden, he comes to me and he says, yeah, you know what, it probably would have been better if they just shut it down so I don't have to deal with this for the next year or so. So I know most people, I think that's an anecdotal example, but I think most people maybe don't quite understand what they want. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but it's great that the Chaparral was able to be sped up by so quickly because the city took the step to shut down that road for that month or so that it was shut down for, and then opened it back up again, and instead of just inconveniencing everybody for a little bit over a long period of time. So I'd really like the city to take that lesson away from that.
I think some of the things to think about when we do a closure like that, are there other alternative routes that are available? And yes, you could take Indian School, you could take Thomas or McDonald to the freeway. And so that was talked about, and then we also closed it during the middle of the summer. And so those are types of things, but we have to evaluate that in those types of closures. And we have talked, when we coordinate with ADOT on the freeway closures, that is talked about. They ask us, can we close up Frank Lloyd Wright on the weekend down to one lane, especially at night? Have at it, you know. So I think there's a balance to provide the ability for them to do their work in the evening hours with closures especially.
Thank you. On the 64th Street study, where can I get more information on that? Like you had your 3 bullet points of kind of what they wanted to do. I didn't quite, I mean, the slowing speeds in that area, that's self-explanatory, but then it just said connect pedestrians to the multi-use path, connect cyclists to the multi-use path, and there wasn't really much more information about what the plans are there. So I'd like
Nathan
to...
can provide information on that.
Yeah, I'm very excited because that's personal to me. That's part of my commute. So I really would like to see what the changes are there. I don't know. Oh, for the trolley, again, I wanted to say I give kudos again. I think when I come to the city council meetings, parking in Old Town is something that gets brought up a lot. A lot of the merchants there really feel like parking is hurting their business, and it's such a valuable sector for the city that I don't think building more parking is a good use of the city's resources, and having something like the trolley that can move people efficiently, because from the videos I see, a lot of our parking garages are empty or at 30% capacity or something. They're not at full capacity, but all the parking spots in front of the merchants are filled, and so making it, and so like I would just push again, I'd really like the trolley to be a year-round thing in that area, and that would definitely, I would assume, once people come to expect it, you would get even more ridership, and that could help with the parking concerns, because if I know I can park a mile away in a giant parking garage and then take the trolley to get to my merchant, I would probably do that option instead. You know, it's like, oh, well, I want to get to this merchant, and if I park a mile away, I'm going to have to walk a mile in Phoenix weather. And so I know we've talked about it, but I just want to reiterate that, and especially like the route that goes near the parking garages, just to show that.
And when we do publicize this spring training route, we also are going to publicize our existing 3 trolley routes at the same time, because that generally surrounds, well, the route, the spring training route. So we want to do the same thing by having, like, take for instance, if we create a map for the spring training route, we also want to include, at least in the corner, this is part of the full trolley system. Yeah. So we totally understand.
I think I've told you before, your department after major storms is very impressive to me. There have been times when there was the storm overnight, and by the time I wake up in the morning and get to my commute, and my alarm goes off at 4:30 a.m., so I have a very early start, and your department's already out there working by the time I actually leave my house. So they do really great work, and it's really inspiring to see how fast the city responds to that. A follow-up to that, though, is I I'm one of those 40,000 plus people who use Scottsdale EZ. One of the things that I never got a response to was I sent a question in because there was a tree that got knocked over near one of our lakes, and I have several times stopped and had lunch underneath that tree or in that general area. And I sent in a question saying, are we going to try and put the tree back up, or are we going to try and replace the tree? Nobody responded to me. The area, it got reseeded with grass. There is no tree there anymore. And so I'm just, I think I had my question answered just by waiting to see what happened, but just curious about when there are trees that are knocked down during our monsoons and other storms. Does the city have a plan to like say, oh, okay, so this tree that got knocked down, we are going to replace it in 2 years, what budget allows, or whatever, whatever. That might be a parks question or something like that.
Possibly parks.
But that would be something, if, you know, you do work in departments, so that would be something that's important, you know, like, it's so important to have these trees around, and it's so disheartening to see, especially with the increased heat we're having, to lose any tree that we have is definitely a loss. And you know, especially we had the presentation a few things back about how important trees are to maintaining the temperature down. That's one of the reasons I use the multi-use path, because of all the grass and the trees. It's always a few degrees cooler on our multi-use path than it is riding along in the bike lane, even though the bike lane is sometimes a more direct route. It's more comfortable to use that. So.
And the EZ system, it's not without error, but I think it has gotten stronger, and we always push residents to use that system because it's easier for us to monitor and to put in a list and make sure that there are responses back. So I think right now that's the efficient system that we have.
Yeah, I use the EZ all the time. When I'm walking around or riding around, I see a lot of times there's water leaks, and I submit those, and then a couple days later I go by the same spot and that leak has stopped. So I know they're great. I've had people call me for other things, so it's a great system. That was just one bad experience I had out of many that I've had over the years, and mostly because I'm just curious about how we handle trees. And then just my earlier point about highlighting the things that the city does. Another example that I wanted to highlight that, you know, isn't quite captured in all the great work that your department's done is by the school, by me, the roads used to be really rough. There was always small gravel bits and stuff like that, which made riding on it, there was potholes, and then there'd be bits of the road just kind of flat around, so you never really felt very safe going too fast because it felt like you could skid or you were going to hit a bump at any point. Your department came in, repaved the whole neighborhood in a week, you know, the surrounding neighborhoods around the school and everything else, and it is just a joy to ride on now. And you know, with your slides about all the stuff you do, I know, like you said, it's innumerable little things in maintenance, but the maintenance is so important to really let people know, because it's so important to those people who use those areas, even if it doesn't matter to somebody who lives, you know, 30 minutes by car away or something like that. It matters a lot to the people who use those, and I think your department deserves recognition for that. So I'd really like to see you guys start pushing that also in these reports. So, and that wraps up all my
Thank you very much.
And comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner? No? Any other comments? Commissioner Davis, do you have any comments?
So I have no questions, but I just kind of want to commend staff. That I'm always so impressed when I see summaries like this of all the work that you do. I'm excited to see what is put together in 2025.
Thank you. So I guess that takes us to future commission agenda items, ideas.
I think I can sit down.
So obviously, we will be working on the transportation safety plan. And are there ideas that you would all like to talk about? Things that you'd like to learn about? Anything that you'd like to think about? Commissioner Kofta?
So I know I've been harassing Kyle about this. I would like to know about speed bumps, particularly because I spend so much time on Oak. There were some speed bumps that were added to the east side of Scottsdale Road there that went through the bike lane, and I guess generally I have a lot of thoughts about how the city does that. The other thing is also there is bike lane and then parking and then the curb, and if there would be a chance for the city to, the next time they do a restriping project in some area like that, maybe have it be curb, bike lane, parking, and that way we could utilize the cars as a buffered bike lane for people at that point. And then also, you know, with the speed bumps, the speed bump design is, I just, the way the speed bump design, I have a lot of, I don't really understand why it's designed the way it is. From the response Kyle got me, some of it's designed around drainage, but I would like to know more about how we decide when we put in a speed bump, what the speed table is, why we design it, the speed bumps this way we do, and if there is chances to utilize a more passive type of protection where we use parked cars as protection versus having to put up bollards or just using paint for the buffering and things like that. So.
Would something like that, as far as using cars to buffer bike lanes, would something like that fall under the transportation safety plan? Something to look at?
I know in Phoenix, they did some trial corridors with parked cars being the buffer between vehicles and cyclists. It takes a lot of space because of car doors. You don't want them to open up or to impede a cyclist, you know, for the passenger side. And it's questionable whether that would work in this city. But I know all of these things will be looked at when we talk about bicycle protection in our pilot project on Jackrabbit Miller Road. So it's something that we could consider in certain instances, but it would be extremely groundbreaking for the city. So I think we're taking smaller steps.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Sorry to keep banging this drum. Just from, and we'll come back to it in the appropriate time as well. I would just make the comment that since like 90-something% or 80-something% of cars are single occupancy, and the fact that if the bike lane goes past, goes on the car, past the car on the driver's side, there's a much greater chance I'm going to get doored riding next to the driver's side than if I'm riding next to the passenger side, just since so few cars carry passengers. I understand the concern and the way that we can, I guess, yeah, you understand what I'm saying. So that would just be the comment I would make on that is it would feel like it's a bigger danger, and so we need to basically have two bike lanes so the cyclist could go around if a passenger does open up, but it seems like the chances of that are lower than if the cyclist is riding past the driver. Mm-hmm. So
That's certainly a larger topic for future agenda items, which are protected bike lanes.
Okay, thank you.
And
thanks for putting up with
what we
that.
have up on the slide is what we feel it would be important to really focus on, even on the previous slide, is a mixture of information and action items. And I think we have that, a lot of that for the year with the safety action plan and some other items, but also pertinent and current items that impact the city, as well as what you feel and experience every day. If we go to the next slide, these are some potential topics that we get emails and things from residents almost on a weekly basis regarding motorized vehicle conflict on multi-use paths and canals. That comes in every week, 2-3 times. So that could be a discussion, and that's a difficult issue because we are not an enforcement mechanism for the city. And then pavement condition index, we have a 5-year paving plan that is being constructed right now, and I think that would be also very pertinent, as well as we talked about the Jackrabbit Miller pedestrian crossing and the protected bike lane pilot project. Those are 3 items that we think would be pertinent, and we kind of wanted to open up to the commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Marmon, do you have any thoughts?
Thank you. Could you go back one slide, please? Yes, I think, I know I would be interested in how your department interacts with the development and review process. And I'd also be interested in how the cell phone antennas are placed in the right-of-way and what you look at doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Pankowitz?
I've enjoyed a lot of the presentations that we've had that are from different departments. And to echo what Commissioner Marmon said, and even Commissioner Cofftail's concern about trees, that coordination between parks and between planning and development in terms of what happens in our right-of-way, I think would be useful for us to learn more about.
Okay, very good.
Same
Thanks.
with police. Yeah, thank you.
And regarding trees and the placement in the right-of-way, we also have transportation staff will be looking at potential locations in the future for trees to add additional shade for bus stops. So that was kind of part of the discussion with the tree and shade master plan and staff working on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Cardella? No. Commissioner Davis, any pertinent issues that you'd like to learn about in the future?
No additions from me, Chair Miller.
Thank you. I just would add that we have pretty much a new council, a new mayor. I assume that they're going to be creating their priorities soon. So anything that may come from that, we need to make sure that we're informed and have the opportunity to discuss.
Without question.
So with that, I'll throw it back to you. Do you have questions for us on things we might want to talk about?
There's also on the list here, if you wanted any updates on that are information pieces on processes, new technology we're looking at and considering, and or grant projects that we're trying to secure additional funding for. We're open for that too, because I think that would also inform the commission. So any ideas that you have, or we can continue to look at that as staff and bring that forward.
I think that would be a good idea, and just as we have new city staff, we have new federal staff, and it would be good to get an update on what kind of impact that the new administration may have on some funding for programs that we are hoping for and perhaps have been gotten in the past.
Because as you can see, those 3, federal, local, and regional, are pretty close to a third of each a third of what we receive every year.
Anything else? Commissioner Kafta?
Just on those updates and all that, because I know we've been, like Commissioner Marmon said, to get updates on meetings and things like that. So if there's anything I mean, I know we were talking about getting like a newsletter or some sort of update to us about upcoming projects and things like that. We might not necessarily have to wait for a meeting. You know, if maybe Kyle could send us information, you know, that might be relevant to us before a meeting, assuming it would still apply or be part of all the open meeting laws and things like that. So rather than waiting for one of the, I guess, 8 remaining meetings of the year. So, because more information, I mean, I always have questions. I always like to know stuff, and it'd be great to be up to date on what our city's doing.
Thank you.
Any last comments? No, hearing none, I think that is it for our agenda. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
It is moved and seconded that we adjourn. Can we just take a voice vote? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is it. Thank you so much. Thank you for the first meeting of the year.